Alright, as you can see, we're broadcasting live from the Kremlin in honor of Robert Mueller's indictment that finally came out. 13 Russian nationals accused of trying to destroy the United States political system with tweets, Facebook ads, and paying some rednecks in Florida to dress up like Hillary Clinton for a rally or whatever. Okay, what we're gonna do? Let me turn this down. This is pretty cool, but I can't even hear myself talk. Put on something a little more festive. Okay, so this indictment's about 37 pages. What I did was go through and highlight some particularly interesting things. And first, I'll give you a basic overview. There are three kinds of charges here. These 13 Russians are accused of not registering themselves as foreign agents with the State Department, the FEC, or any of the groups in the federal government that are supposed to regulate political activity and foreign agents. So that's the main crime that they did. The second crime that they did was register bank accounts in the United States under false names that weren't theirs. So they committed wire fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy to commit those two things. That's the second type of crime they did. The third thing that they did was identity theft, because apparently the names that they used to register those bank accounts belonged to real people. So I don't know if that's just by coincidence or if they went and found some real people's information and used it to make it appear to be more legitimate. But that's what these 13 Russians are indicted for. It's not actually the subversion that they carried out. That's not what they're being accused. Those aren't the crimes they're being accused of. If you read this indictment and all its 37 pages, all of the political activity that they did wasn't expressly illegal. It was their failure to register, their bank accounts, and then their identity theft. So, what was the activity, or who was doing this stuff? Supposedly, according to this indictment, there was an organization called the Russian government, which gave out a contract to another organization, which gave out a contract to another organization, which gave out a contract to a third organization. By the time we get down to that level, we're talking about a private company somewhere in St. Petersburg that isn't related directly to the Russian government. So you can't say that Putin did this stuff. They just have to infer that Putin did this stuff, that he's telling them what to do. For all we know, it's a Russian oligarch, a private party, might not even be Russians themselves, right? This could be the Belgians or something who are paying this company. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say this was a Russian government program. They've got a company, an organization, and they're paying them to be internet trolls. They say here on page, I forget what page this is, probably page 5, but it's paragraph 10A. The organization's annual budget totaled the equivalent of millions of US dollars. So whoever's funding this is paying millions of dollars a year for these tweets, Facebook posts, etc., etc. It goes through and lists all the 13 people who are indicted and gives you a little bit of information about them. The only one that I thought was interesting was this guy named Robert Sergeyevich Bovda. Robert's kind of a weird first name for a Russian. But the more interesting thing is that he tried to travel to the United States, but the United States would not give him a visa to enter the country. This is interesting because apparently we let terrorists in and we can't keep illegal immigrants from crossing the southern border, but we can identify people who are affiliated with one of these Russian spy agencies and keep them from coming into the country. So that's some interesting evidence for me that our government, for whatever reason, identifies this as something that they need to be worrying about, but the stuff that we all care about, which is the terrorism and the illegal immigrants, they're not able to do that. Resource question, interest, I don't know, you decide. So this company, this group in Russia, in Petersburg, was creating online social media groups that were basically filled up with bots or trolls, and they modeled them after political forces in the United States that all share a common theme of being anti-establishment. So they had one called Secured Borders, they had one called Blacktivist, so that's Black Lives Matter and anti-immigration stuff. they had United Muslims of America, and they had Army of Jesus. So they're trying to cover their bases and basically get all the different groups that they can think of. And then my favorite here, they had Southern United and Heart of Texas, because, as they apparently understood from doing their research, there is an animosity between the South and the urban, coastal, cosmopolitan elite that run this country. So if you're Russia and you want to try to drive a wedge in between the power structure in the United States and the people, Southern regionalism and Southern ethnic identity is something you could effectively use to do that. So that's what they apparently did. I don't know if you followed the Tennessee GOP account on Twitter before it was destroyed, but I did, and I actually remember when it was deleted. And after that, I got an email from Twitter saying, "Warning, you may have been following Russian trolls, and we hope they didn't rot your brain too much." So I still am not entirely convinced that that was a Russian account, but they are actually saying openly now that it was, and it's in the indictment here. What else were they doing? So their basic platform, okay, so this whole program started in 2014, so they were doing all their trolling and shit posting way before the 2016 presidential election. So this indictment shows you right here that they didn't come out of the woodwork just to help Donald Trump. They were doing their stuff a long time before that. When the election got started, nobody, including the Russians, thought that Donald Trump was going to win. Or at least, I'll say that. I'm sure there's plenty of people who called it, but whatever. Most people didn't think that he was going to win the election. The Russians decided that they were going to support two candidates, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. The interesting thing to me is that those were the two candidates that the American people actually wanted, right? Those were the two candidates that drew the crowds, that got the small donations. So if you want to talk about the influence of Russian meddling in the election, it looks like that this Russian organization, the spy organization, was actually promoting the candidates that the American people wanted, but that the power elite in America and the deep state and the political class and all of our business leaders and everything hated. So, I mean, if you want to be real about this, you got a weird situation in which foreign actors are actually trying to help 70% of the country get what they want. So, foreign meddling, not exactly good, but I think basically our political class is kind of like a foreign group in our own country. So, let's see, defendants and co-conspirators. This is one of oh my God, this is one of the things that really irks them, is that Trump campaign supporters, just regular Trump voters, Trump supporters, talked to Russians on Twitter and Facebook. Oh my God, can you believe it? Oh my God, how terrifying. Let's see. Eventually, once the balance of the race started to shake out and it was Trump versus Clinton, the Russians set up their program to be expressly anti-Clinton and pro-Trump. And this is all the stuff that the mainstream media and the shit-libs are constantly talking about. Here's some examples of some tweets and Facebook posts that the Russians were putting up, or these are things they were actually paying for. So they had to set up those bank accounts in order to be able to buy Facebook and Twitter ads in the United States without it obviously coming from Russia. So here's some stuff they posted. Hillary is a Satan, and her crimes and lies have proved just how evil she is. We cannot trust Hillary to take care of our veterans. Hillary Clinton doesn't deserve the black vote. Donald wants to defeat terrorism. Hillary wants to sponsor it. It's all true. I mean, that's my problem here, is that the stuff that the Russians were posting was not some crazy conspiracy theory based in some far out universe. All this stuff could have come from anybody on the right, in the Republican Party, in the base of Trump voters. It's not too interesting. Let's see. Besides posting tweets and Facebook stuff, there's really only, I think, 2 examples of any effect that the Russians may have had physically, like in the real world. And one is that they got somebody to hold up a sign saying, "Support Hillary, save American Muslims." And they got themselves to this person that they hired took a picture of themselves holding the sign, and then the Russians posted that online and said, "Let's have a rally." Several sources said that this rally took place, but I couldn't find any pictures or evidence that it ever actually occurred, so that's kind of like a supposition that I couldn't at least verify. However, in Florida, on August 20th, there were some Trump rallies in Florida called Florida Goes Trump, and the Russians were involved in talking to people who carried out these rallies and who went to these rallies, and in one case, they paid someone to build a fake prison cage in the flatbed of a truck, and they paid someone to dress up like Hillary Clinton and stand in the cage while the other person drove it around at the rally. So I'm sure that any of these deep state people and establishment people and shit libs and Democrats and all that stuff will say that the Russians completely organized this rally, paid for everything, and carried it out. But I think mostly they were just in contact with the people in Florida who were actually doing it. And this is a Facebook thing that I found that says that 339 people went to those rallies all across the state of Florida, not just in one place, it was in multiple cities, and about 2,000 people clicked on it on Facebook and said that they liked it. So that's about as close as we get to the Russians influencing practical things rather than just posting on the internet. And finally, like the funniest thing in this entire indictment, it says that on November the 12th in New York City and in North Carolina, the Russians were trying to get rallies going that were both in support of Donald Trump and against Donald Trump at the same time. So after he won the election, the Russians reverted basically to treating him like the establishment, which based on his actions I think is probably pretty fair. And if their goal is really just to like drive a wedge between the different factions in the American political system, I think that that would be a good reading of it based on this, because they're trying to do pro-Trump and anti-Trump rallies at the same time, which is kind of crazy. Okay, so now we're back to the start. That's pretty much it. The takeaways from here, I would say, is that this is a whole lot of nothing. I was going to play you the Victoria Nuland phone call. Let me see if I can do that real quick. I'm going to pause this and restart it with that. Just a second. Okay, so now we've traveled to Washington, D.C., as you can see behind me, and we're going to listen to a transcript and a little bit of video of the people who are talking of the Victoria Nuland deal. So she's the Assistant Secretary of State. She's dealing with the Ukraine stuff. This call is going to be from January the 28th, I think, 2014. Hold on, let me double check the date for you because it is actually relevant. Yeah, January the 28th. So when this call occurs in history is right before the government in Ukraine is overthrown as a result of the Euromaidan protests. So let's see what she has to say to her underling.
What do you think?
I think we're in play. The Klitschko piece is obviously the complicated electron here, especially the announcement of him as deputy prime minister. And you've seen some of my notes on the troubles in the marriage right now, so we're trying to get a read really fast on where he is on this stuff.
What they're talking about is that Klitschko is one of the main faces of the anti-government protest movement, and they've already started dividing up the spoils that when they kick out the old government, they're going to have a whole bunch of new positions to fill. So he's going to get one of the main positions because he's a famous guy, he's an international celebrity, he's a big boxer, heavyweight, I think, used to be. So he's going to get one of the positions, and this underling in the State Department is acknowledging that that's what the opposition movement wants and is going to expect.
But I think your argument to him, which you'll need to make, I think that's the next phone call we want to set up, is exactly the one you made to Yachts. And I'm glad you sort of put him on the spot on where he fits in this scenario. And I'm very glad he said what he said in response.
Good. So I don't think Cleach should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
So Victoria Nuland just said that she doesn't think that this guy should be in the government. Who in the fuck is she to decide who's going to go into the new Ukrainian government? Why would someone in the United States Department of State have any input on the government that's going to be formed in Ukraine? Now, I want you to pay close attention to the exasperation in the underling's voice here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you think what in terms of him not going into the government, just
So you hear the way this guy's responding, like he doesn't even know what to do. To him, this is a ridiculous proposition that this guy should not be part of the government. They have apparently all agreed that this is going to take place, right? This is the agreement that's been reached in the Ukrainian opposition.
let him sort of stay out and do his political homework and stuff. I'm just thinking, in terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys. And, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I think Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, what he needs is Klitsch and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week. I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
So she's got her assessment of what's going to work or not going to work, but apparently she has the ability to dictate what's going to happen in this new Ukrainian government. So if you want an example of what real meddling in another country's national politics looks like, it's not posting it's not posting tweets, it's not posting ads on Facebook, it's deciding who is going to be part of the ruling coalition of personalities within a government, completely outside of the Ukrainian public. This woman, Victoria Nuland, had more swing in determining who's going to be in the government of Ukraine than millions of Ukrainians all added together. So I just thought that I would play this for you just to kind of keep everything in context. Whenever pull the old whataboutism trick, if people think that posting tweets and Facebook ads and building a fake prison cell in the back of a flatbed truck is meddling in other governments and national enterprises, just ask them about this, and they probably never heard of it anyway. Thank you for your time.